The other part of this conversation that leads into is a conversation around funding, and I would like to ask you about this. This is the original story where the headline says on the day public health officials announced a whooping cough epidemic, staff at the National Public Health Services were told their jobs were on the line. Since then, nearly 1,500 more Te Whatu Ora roles face the axe. I just did a tweet recently that based on it's Margie Upper, isn't it, the CE, where she says, Te Whatu Ora has made some good progress towards living within our means, but we are still spending more than we have in our budget. Now, the tweet that I just did, and I won't read it out word for word, said something like, when they talk about living within their means, what they're talking about is an arbitrary number that this government has decided to give them. And there's another way they could live within their means, which is the government could just make an arbitrary number higher and give them more. But what they're trying to do is cut back and give them less. I also want to talk to you about when there was a story the other day about $42 million going into healthcare for new doctors. So on one hand, the government seems to be saying, look what we're doing, all this money for doctors. And then on the other side, it's like, you don't have enough money to actually staff your organisation as well as you can. Too long, that question, big ideas, but love your thoughts.
Yeah, the announcement of more doctors was really fascinating because at first blush, you want to be reasonable and say, wow, Shane Reti and Lester Levy have found the money to put an additional 42 million into 50 doctor roles, about 75 nursing roles, and 12 million of that is for like minor improvements to hospitals. And so initially you want to say, this is fantastic, we need more of this. Then in talking to people about the actual details of this, you learn that it's not an additional 42 million. They have repurposed this money from elsewhere within the budget.
Of course they have.
And again, I'm not a lawyer, a politician or whatever, but this is what smart people have said. And I believe it to be true. They've not come up with more money, they've repurposed money. So you have to start asking yourself, all of the horrendous cutbacks in healthcare staffing, these recruitment freezes, the fact that my colleagues say they cannot fill roles, people leave the Te Whatu and the role will not even be advertised. Wow. And so it just goes on as a vacancy. And then other people are having to work ungodly amounts of hours to try to compensate. We have, I was going to say stories. They're not stories. They're real. I know these people who are foregoing their breaks because they are so understaffed. They need to stay on duty and eat their lunch at their job at their work, because they don't feel that they can safely go away. What used to be 2 staff workers positions has now been reduced to 1. So so going back to the 50 doctors, it might be a start if it was in genuine funding, but it's been taken from somewhere else. And then the bigger question should be that the journalists are not asking them is, wow, 42 million sounds like a lot of money to a regular person. And it is, but it's actually the money they're putting into these new doctors and nurses, it satisfies 3% of the shortage.
Right.
In the case of doctors, 3%. In the case of nurses, about 3.5%. So this is pissing in the wind. It's craziness that they would have a media photo opportunity in an underserved area with like a little mini press conference to announce that they have repurposed 3% of doctors and nurses staff deficit. So what about the other 97% that we're missing? Does that get a photo opportunity? Does that have its own little show on the news? Of course not.
So if that's 3%, that means you've got a times by about 33. That's over $1 billion needed to actually fulfill the shortfall. So
Shane Reti said, I think it was half a year ago, that there were something like 485 GP positions that were vacant, that needed to be filled nationwide. That's a lot. You add that to the best estimate we have of the hospital doctors, missing about 1,000, I'm going to look this number up because I don't want to get it wrong, 1,140. So that comes out to 1,600 doctors that we were down. And of course, that number probably has gotten a little bit worse because there has been attrition and people have left the service and have left the country in some cases. I don't need to tell you that right now it's not a hot time to want to go into general practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to work it out exactly,
yeah.
I just did it. It's 1.386 billion. And because we do like to beat a dead horse here sometimes, I'm just going to remind people, 3 billion to landlords, 14 billion in tax cuts. And what I hear you saying is the money that we need for the healthcare, in addition, new money, you're talking about repurposed money. So new money is, say, 1.4 billion. So half of what we're giving the landlords would suffice the system that we need to get set up if we could.
Yeah, Pat, you also don't want to ask what could we get for another billion. If you take just a fraction of the money that we gave to landlords, you could pay for free dental care for every New Zealander. I mean, come on. The magnitude of the money that went to the landlords is astronomical. It's $2.9 billion in tax deductibility that they got. And okay, I want to make it clear. I've had some personal interactions where people said, you know, my elderly relative has a rental unit. It's what's going to get them through retirement. Mm-hmm. And to that, I would say I have every feeling for them. And we could easily government could have easily crafted a law that helped the humble mom and pop landlords with maybe one extra unit. And instead, they gave 2.9 billion even to the people with 70 rental units, even to the multimillionaires. They estimate that the top 300 landlords will each make $1 million extra a year as a result of these tax breaks. That did not need to happen.